One of the biggest false claims found in the Bible, and one of the biggest lies Christians have continued to spread for centuries, is the idea that Jesus, who lived 2000 years ago, is going to come back again. Christians teach that the second coming is a biblical prophecy, and they have been repeating this claim for 2 millennia. But the problem is this: that prophecy has already been proven false. Without realizing it, Christians have been spreading that lie for 2000 years. Even today, they keep saying that Jesus will return soon. I have discussed this topic in another video as well. Whenever people ask Christians, "You have been saying for 2000 years that he will return, so why hasn't he returned yet?" Christians immediately create excuses. They claim Jesus is delaying his return so that everyone will repent, and they even quote a verse from the Bible to support this idea. But according to that logic, Jesus has been waiting for everyone to repent for 2000 years. Even today, Christians repeat the same lie, and after another 2000 years, they will still say the same thing again. This is simply a convenient way to avoid admitting the truth that he is never going to return. Today, however, we are going to look at something even more important, a direct biblical proof showing just how false the claim of the second coming really is. And this proof comes from the words attributed to Jesus himself, revealing that his so-called second coming was a prophecy that failed to happen. That failed prophecy is found in Matthew chapter 16, verse 28. In that verse, Jesus is quoted as saying, "Truly I tell you, some who are standing here will not taste death before they see the Son of Man coming in his kingdom." This is about the second coming of Christ. This verse is presented as a prophecy, a clear, time-bound promise. According to the text, Jesus' coming in his kingdom was supposed to occur within the lifetime of his disciples. Yet Christians today, 2000 years later, are still expecting the second coming. That itself proves one thing very clearly. Matthew 16:28 never came true. It is a failed prophecy. If this prophecy had been fulfilled, Christians today would simply say it already happened, but they cannot. No such event exists in history. Therefore, Christian apologists, preachers, are forced to invent explanations to cover up this failure. On the screen, you can see the explanations given by several popular Christian apologetic websites. They argue that this verse, Matthew 16:28, is not about the second coming, but about an event that supposedly happened just 6 days later, the Transfiguration. In the very next chapter, Matthew chapter 17, in verses 1 to 3, Jesus takes 3 disciples, Peter, James, and John, up a mountain where he is transfigured before them. Based on this, Christian apologists say Jesus was not predicting his second coming in Matthew 16:28. Instead, they argue he was referring to this private spiritual vision witnessed only by those 3 disciples. Thereby, they claim that Matthew 16:28 was already fulfilled. But we can refute this explanation using 2 powerful points. Point number 1. Matthew 16:27, the verse immediately before Matthew 16:28, says, "For the Son of Man is going to come in his Father's glory with his angels, and then he will reward each person according to what they have done." This is clearly about the second coming. It clearly describes a future global event involving angels, involving judgment, involving rewards in the Father's glory. This is unmistakably describing the second coming, not a small private vision. Therefore, the next verse, Matthew 16:28, can refer only to the second coming, the very event Christians today are still waiting for. So Matthew 16:28 is not about Transfiguration event. So the apologist's explanation collapses immediately. And point number 2. Jesus says in Matthew 16:28, "Some of you will not taste death." It proves it cannot be the Transfiguration. If Matthew 16:28 referred to an event happening just 6 days later, then none of the disciples died within those 6 days. All were still alive at the Transfiguration. Jesus would not need to say some will not taste death. The statement becomes unnecessary and meaningless. So the prophecy in Matthew 16:28 clearly implies some disciples would die before the event, and others would still be alive when it happened. This timing does not match the Transfiguration at all. All the disciples lived beyond those 6 days. None tasted death prior to the event. So the Transfiguration explanation is impossible. Because Matthew 16:28 does not match the Transfiguration, and because Matthew 16:27 clearly describes the second coming, only one conclusion remains. Jesus was predicting his second coming within the lifetime of his disciples. That means the second coming was expected to happen in the first century, but it never happened. Instead of acknowledging that this prophecy failed, Christians reinterpret the verse and claim it was fulfilled in the Transfiguration. But Matthew 16:28 is clearly about the second coming and nothing else. By rebranding it as a different event, Christians create the illusion that the prophecy has already been fulfilled, and at the same time keep insisting that the real second coming is still in the future. In reality, the prophecy failed, and the reinterpretation exists only to cover that failure. So the conclusion is this: Matthew 16:28 is a failed prophecy. The Bible's own timeline exposes this. Jesus' disciples lived and died without ever seeing the Son of Man coming in his kingdom. The event never occurred. The second coming did not happen in their lifetime, and it never happened afterward. This explains why Jesus has not returned even after 2000 years, because the prophecy was never real in the first place. And this leads to the only rational conclusion. This prophecy was not spoken by a historical Jesus. It was created by the gospel authors. The dishonesty of the writers of the Bible not only exposes the failure of the second coming prophecy, but also shatters the claim that the Bible is God-inspired.